Hi everybody, Dan Illman taking a look at the Wednesday race of the day, the $200,000 Caesars Stakes at Indiana Grand. Let's take a peek at this field. We are going a mile on the turf for 3-year-olds. The number 1 Toss of Fate is expected to be scratched out of this race. As of scratch time Tuesday afternoon, Toss of Fate is still in the 8th race as of Indiana Grand. We'll assume the Toss of Fate will run there and scratch out of the tougher spot in the Caesars. And the 3 Gray Magician, the 3-to-1 second choice on the morning line, well, he just ran over the weekend in the Grade 3 Smarty Jones Stakes on the dirt, where he finished a very good second. It's hard to imagine Peter Miller wheeling this horse back on 2 days' rest, so I would expect this one to scratch as well. So we'll begin with the number 2, Clint Maroon, who was a stakes winner earlier this season for trainer Todd Pletcher. After his 4th place finish in the Manila Stakes, a race we're going to look at right now, he was purchased at public auction for $200,000. You see the horse in the gray. He is second from the left on your screen. He stumbled at the start in this race, angled 4 wide as you see, and in between horses he's just getting tired. This was a decent field that beat him. Horses like Win Win Win, who was on the Kentucky Derby Trail, Casa Creed, the 3rd place finisher, came out of this race to win a stakes race at Saratoga, and Clint Maroon, after this performance, shipped to Arlington to run in the Grade 1 Secretariat, where he was a bit eager in the early portion of the race, had a good trip, and just couldn't class up with those horses. He is getting a bit of a drop. He fits, he draws a comfortable inside post position with tactical speed, and I would expect a better performance from Clint Maroon in this race. Again, with the expected 1 and 3 out, we'll move to the number 4, Coruz, who is stretching out second off the layoff. This horse ran against Older in his most recent start in the Kentucky Downs Preview Turf Sprint. I'm going to take that race with several grains of salt. He really did not fire. His prior start was way back in February, going a mile, and while he didn't stay the trip that day as the 6-5 favorite, since the race preceded a layoff, one can assume that maybe something went physically amiss with Coruz. He is lightly raced, a lot of upside, and has the pedigree to get a mile. He also has some figs that put him in the mix at a very big price. Maybe you could use him underneath in single race exotics. The 5 is Faraway Kitten, going out for Michael Maker, and this is of course the son of Kitten's Joy, a reformed claimer that came back to win the Mystic Lake Derby in style 3 starts back at Canterbury. We see him as the number 1, drafting in behind horses, and right now he's stymied with no place to go. And Draki Orlando Mojica is going to try to get this horse to the outside because he's full of run, and right now he's like, no, I'm boxed in, I'm going to alter course dramatically down to the rail. And despite running sideways for most of the stretch, we're going to see Faraway Kitten come with a strong late run along the inside to win this race. And this race was kind of a harbinger that this horse was in good form because he came back to win the American Derby at Arlington at odds of 15-1 before finishing 7th in the aforementioned Secretariat, a race in which he was wide against better horses. He certainly fits dropping back to this level. He picks up an excellent rider in Julien Leparoux, and he's tactical enough that he can be placed however the pace situation works out. The 6 is Crafty Daddy, who finished ahead of 3 of these common rivals in the Secretariat. He ran a good race that day. He was closer to the pace than usual, and while he has run well with that running style in the past, I think he's better off from slightly farther back, and I think that's where Florent Giroux will have him in the Caesars. Let's go back to Crafty Daddy's allowance win at Keeneland, 4 starts back over yielding ground, and there is some wet weather in the forecast at Indiana Grand on Wednesday. Here we see Crafty Daddy making the lead and gamely holding off the runner-up, Jace's Solitude, who not only came out of this race to win, but then ran a very game second in the Virginia Derby last weekend. That's a pretty good horse that Crafty Daddy is holding off. After that race, he finished a solid second behind Faraway Kitten in that American Derby and was far from disgraced in the Secretariat. He's trained by Brad Cox, and he just ticks many boxes in this spot and is worth using in any sort of multiple race wager. The number 7 is Irish Heatwave, and we're going to look at Irish Heatwave's last race at Del Mar, where he's the beaten favorite, and some folks might be disappointed. We see him 3 wide in the dark-colored silks, and it looks like he's going to take control of this race as the favorite, and he only finishes 1 paced. And on first glance, it looks like a race where he just didn't fire. And then you go back and look at the horses he was in against, and you're saying, this isn't your average non-winners of one other than. Originaire, the winner of that race, came back to run second in the Del Mar Derby last weekend, a Grade 2 event with a 90 buyer. And the 3rd place finisher has since come back to win 2 races in a row for that 80,000 optional claiming non-winners of one other than level, with buyers of 79 and 86 respectively. Irish Heatwave was in a tough spot in that race, and his prior efforts were both good. just getting beaten ahead in the Snow Chief and winning the Silky Sullivan up at Golden Gate Fields by a nose. Keith DeZormo is not chipping without a good reason. Irish Heatwave fits with these kind of horses, and at 15-1 on the morning line, I would expect him to be kicking late in the game. Brad Cox we already talked about. He has Crafty Daddy, but perhaps he has a little bit of a sleeper in Firewater Jake, who has won 2 of his last 3 starts, one of them at Indiana Grand in gate-to-wire fashion. Firewater Jake was basically in a paid workout most recently, a $75,000 optional claiming, now winners of one other than event, where at 3-5, he sat second off a big long shot, let that horse cruise along on the lead, and whenever he was ready to go, Firewater Jake went by that horse, and there wasn't a lot of closing against him. He still earned a very good Beyer speed figure in that race, and has the tactical speed to work out a trip. I think this horse is upwardly mobile. I think he's going to be a price for Cox, and I think he's going to get the jump on some of the main competition in the race. The 9 is Riheka, another horse shipping in from Southern California. Let's go back to his most recent start, the Grade 3 La Jolla handicap. Kingley just went to the front and bottomed out this field. Last on the rail right now is Riheka, and once he changes leads, he comes with a one-paced finish. It's an okay run to get fourth, nearer to the inside, never threatening Kingley, and never threatening the runner-up Neptune Storm, who came back to run third in the aforementioned Del Mar Derby with a 90 Beyer speed figure. Riheka has now earned 81 Beyers in his 2 starts of this form cycle. He is more of a late running type ever since he's been gelded, and he's going to need a little bit of pace up front. Speaking of pace, let's throw up the Timeform US pace projector for this race, and they've got the 11 Spectacular Gem out there on the lead. Remember that the pace projector adjusts for scratches once they are named official, so we would take the 1 and the 3 out, and we would put the also eligibles, the 13 Evil Eye and the 14 Imperial Mission in. So this pace projector might be a little bit different once scratches are made official. As for right now, you see the number 8 Firewater Jake sitting in a very good spot in second position off the 11 Spectacular Gem. The horse we want to talk about right now, though, is the 10 Rise the Guy. And Rise the Guy most recently in the Grade 1 Secretariat didn't fire, but he was wide every step of the way, and he was getting bet a little bit in that spot at 7-1. His 2 prior efforts, one on turf, one on wet dirt, earned Beyers of 88 and 89. Both would put him in good stead, and as you can see from the pace projector, a nice trip is coming. I think this horse is an interesting bounce-back candidate. The 11 Spectacular Gem might be able to get to the front, as he did 2 starts back in the Black Gold Stakes in an off-the-turf race at the fairgrounds. Now, he made the lead that day, and he was beaten, and that race preceded a long layoff. His most recent start came against older horses on the dirt at Ellis Park. I think it was nothing more than a prep effort. While he's done well on turf in the past on the lead, I think he's more of a target for horses like the 8, the 10, and the 4. The 12 is Fever Temple. This is an Indiana bred who has only won once in his career, and that race was on the dirt. But his most recent start on the turf against fellow state breds, he finished ahead of 3 next out winners while running second over Yielding Going. So he might get the ground he wants. I think he's in sneaky good form. He just looks a little bit slow on paper, and this is a big hike in class. As for the also eligibles, the 13 Evil Eye likes this course. He is very lightly raced with a good pedigree, and he's trained by Michael Maker. He's another one that has to improve off of that 72 lifetime Beyer that he earned in his most recent win at Ellis Park, but being so lightly raced, there's no reason why he can't. This outside post might be problematic, and the 14 Imperial Mission certainly deserves an opportunity in this race. He's won his last 2, one of them over this Indiana Grand course. Last time out at Belterra, he just got a perfect trip, sitting inside, the rail opened up, he shot on through. Imperial Mission's probably not going to get that trip from the far outside post. Let's take a look at my top pick for the $200,000 Caesars Stakes. I really respect Crafty Daddy in here. I think he's going to be a short price for Brad Cox. I want to use him. I want to use the number 11 Spectacular Gem, who might be able to sneak out to an easy early lead. Yes, maybe he's a bit of a target. I would use him as a backup in multiple race wagers and underneath in single race exotics, but my top pick is Firewater Jake. He's just in good form right now, and I think if he finds that Timeform US pace projector spot, sitting second off the speeds, he can get the jump on these, turning into the stretch at what should be a decent price. So I'm going 8, 6, and 11 in the feature race on Wednesday, your formulator race of the day, the $200,000 Caesars Stakes. It has an approximate post time of 5:59 Eastern. Best of luck.